So, the big question is on everyone's mind is why is Dominic Cummings still in number 10? Despite everything that happened, despite the absolute pasting that he took, despite the fact that Boris Johnson has taken a massive political hit to his political capital by keeping Johnson on, there is a backbench rebellion bubbling away, as we've mentioned this before, and only today it is the hang on when we're doing this. It's the 15th we're doing this on today, and we had news this morning that there are a group of MPs that want to put forward a vote on extending the transition period. That could be very interesting, depending on the numbers, because we know a lot of Conservative MPs do not want to risk damaging the UK even more, especially if they're going into a recession and into a pandemic, which their government was on call and handled incredibly poorly, which has almost guaranteed, unfortunately to say, that there may indeed be a second wave coming in this country. It looks very likely like there could be. As unfortunate as that may be, because of how badly the Tory government has handled this scenario. But here we are. So the main question is why has Cummings been kept on? Well, today we go to this piece, which discusses exactly that. So why is Cummings still in number 10? Because vote leave, never say sorry. Dominic Cummings is a lucky man. A couple of weeks ago... Oh, there we go. Sorry, there we go. So, Dominic Cummings is a lucky man. A couple of weeks ago, Boris Johnson's chief strategist and his lockdown-busting trip to northeast England dominated the news headlines. Now, the global outpouring of Black Lives Matter protests and other vital issues in the coronavirus pandemic have captured the news agenda. With the Prime Minister's vocal support, Cummings still has a job, and the world seems to have moved on. But Cummings' continued presence at the heart of the British government is not just down to luck, of course. Johnson's special advisor has probably the most valuable seat in Downing Street right now. The unswerving loyalty of the Vote Leave campaign that now holds the key levers of power in British politics. On paper, Vote Leave disappeared almost 4 years ago, having won the Brexit referendum. The campaign packed up its Spartan office beside Lambeth Bridge, and Cummings left politics to advise an artificial intelligence startup, which subsequently won lots of NHS contracts, but that is another story. But Vote Leave hasn't gone away. After the Brexit vote, the European Research Group, the instrumental in torpedoing May's ill-fated premiership, often resembled the parliamentary wing of Vote Leave. When Johnson, Vote Leave's public face, came to power last July, his first significant act was to bring in a large swathe of campaign backroom operation into the heart of his new administration. From Cummings as his right-hand man to Lee Kane as Downing Street's truculent head of communications. All the great officers of the state are now held by Brexit true believers, from Priti Patel to Dominic Raab. So why does all this matter? Well, for one thing, now that Vote Leave have managed to take control of the government and look set to take us to the brink of a no-deal Brexit again, many of its ranks are worried about what would happen if their grip were not around to oversee the project. As one of Vote Leave figures told the Sunday Times when asked about jettisoning Cummings, he said, "We need him. We took 3 years to get the gang in there, and we can't throw it away now. The level of faith in Cummings is something of sections of government borders on the messianic. It may seem hard to understand from his public persona, but Cummings is clearly capable of engineering great loyalty. When I was researching my new book on money and power and British politics, I spoke to a number of people in and around Vote Leave. The most striking thing was how more junior staff in particular saw Cummings as their defender. He always had your back, one person told him. You have my support, he said of one. In government, Cummings has made such loyalty paramount. Those accused of leaking to the press have been have been frog marched out of the office. Under Cummings, Downing Street has become a permanent campaign machine, often responding to the pandemic. Has been treated like a referendum. The media narrative to manage by any means necessary, no matter how bizarre or cynical. Of course, it is their all too real difference between the 350 million on the side of the bus and opening up a practically unready track and trace system to deflect public heat. It is tempting to see Vote Leave and Cummings as synonymous. Why else would Johnson invest so much political capital in his special advisor if he is not pulling all the strings? He remains in post now largely because of the Vote Leave fraternity. Worries about how it would remain if a man who masterminded the Brexit vote and Johnson's stonking majority in December's general election, the belligerent style of politics practiced by Vote Leave has now even allowed the Prime Minister to ignore public opinion of Cummings. But such a narrow framing around Johnson's senior advisor risks ignoring a wider developments in the government, where a grander cast of Vote Leave figures has now become increasingly influential. Michael Gove has centralised a significant amount of power at the Cabinet Office. In a sign of the department's growing muscle, the one-time Vote Leave Leave stalwarts, Gisela Stewart and Henry Dezol, were quietly brought into the Cabinet Office of non-executive directors last month. Vote Leave famously declined to sketch out even the faintest outline of its post-Brexit Britain, but the contours of its project in government can start to be divined. Controls need to be concentrated in the centre. Whitehall needs to be torn down. The public sector... Oh, God damn it. Sorry about that. Oh, go away. So one of the things that I've said about this while we try and regain where we were is that Cummings is being kept because Johnson is a man with no ideas. He wants to be Prime Minister and the man who was Prime Minister, but he has no intention of doing the thing in between. You saw this when he was Mayor of London. He wanted to be Mayor of London and the man who was Mayor of London as the prestige that brought him, but he wasn't interested in the detail. He left that to others. Yes, but here we are. So control needs to be concentrated in the centre. Whitehall needs to be torn down. Public sector is considered inherently inefficient and untrustworthy, which should be worrying to a lot of people because that is what they've said before. We covered this multiple times, even back when they first came to light. The book, Britannia Unchained, that is the very blueprint they want to do, which in its core envisions completely privatising public services, sectors around the country, the NHS, getting rid of regulations which they believe hold Britain back. Again, they don't mention which regulations. They call, and again, in the preface to the book, British workers completely lazy because they are protected by regulations, which should say something of one of the regulations that they certainly want to get rid of. So Grove's Cabinet Office is instructive. The department has played a central role in Britain's COVID-19 response, mostly by outsourcing every conceivable aspect of it. When Duterte was hired to oversee the procurement of personal protective equipment, the consultancy firm even set up a unit in the Cabinet Office. The results could almost be generously described as patchy. A vote Leave government, as embroiled by Cummings, cares little for institutions and precedents. Executive power tramples all before it. With this mindset, we've seen Parliament prolonged in an attempt to deliver political objectives, even if doing so was illegal. Transparency and accountability are considered more liberal buzzwords. They are not essential to governing. Electoral laws, like lockdown rules, are for other people to follow. The revelations about Cummings' lockdown drive to Durham emerged 3 weeks ago. The question of whether he will leave Downing Street has begun to fade away. But one day, Cummings and his cadre will be gone. This ultimately poses a bigger question. What will the British state and society look like when the Vote Leave state of mind is no longer in power? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we should worry about these people being in power, because they have every intention of delivering what we have seen what we've thought and seen of the past 10 years look nothing. They're going to be considered paradise, even though many people were suffering under austerity. Yeah, those days are going to look like paradise concerned to what they've got planned, and we should be worried increasingly by what they plan. Because, as they said, Vote Leave never had a plan, because no one would ever have voted for Vote Leave's plan, but you're going to be seeing everything of what they want to do brought out in droves, especially with the Conservative majority, and all that starts in January of next year. And I've said it before on this channel, but the idea and the phrase of "this isn't the Brexit I voted for" will become, I think, quite synonymous. Now, we'll have to see what happens if this vote comes forward. If it does, I will certainly be covering it, so there will be a video wherever it comes out. Could even be before this video, who knows. But yeah, see you all soon.